All right. I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Present.
Councilmember Ryan.
Here.
Councilmember Wooder.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Here.
Mayor Massamoto Wright.
Here.
Councilmember Son Moore asked to be excused for tonight.
Move to excuse Councilmember Sonmore.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So she has been excused. And next on our agenda is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. A couple of things to mention tonight. First, I want to remind everybody that the Juneteenth event takes place on Saturday over here at Snow Isle Libraries. We're all looking forward to that. It should be a great time with, if I remember right, free food. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Second, did want to remind everybody, and we've communicated with the community and users, but I want to remind everybody again that the pool and the sauna and the hot tub at the pavilion will be closed next week for maintenance through the 23rd. So through next, not this upcoming Sunday, but the following Sunday. And South County Walks with our partner Verdant will start again on July 8th, and we're looking forward to that. Second to last, on the Sonic basketball court, we have the brand new basketball hoops and backboards have been put up, and we're looking forward to the resurfacing a little bit later this summer. So that's going to be a nice addition, surfacing to the court. And then I did want to mention the two evening events earlier this week, both the open house for the comprehensive plan and the Terrace talk last night, focused on public safety. Well, Terrace talk wasn't as well attended as I had hoped, but the sun was out, so I can kind of understand that. But got a good presentation from members of our team about domestic violence and how that's handled within the city, along with some displays of our drones and some discussion about how that works. And then the open house at the Brighton School on Tuesday evening, I thought was well attended. We got a lot of good feedback. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? So let's see, we can start over there with Councilmember Woodard and then Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a question, more of a comment and a reframing. I didn't make Terrace talk last night, and the police department being the subject of the talk and it not being well attended, I think is a good reflection, if not a solid reflection, of our police department and their interaction with our community, that they're willing to put themselves out there and be vulnerable, they're willing to talk, they're willing to engage, and that's why we didn't have, when usually you have here's an opportunity to talk to your local police department, you can't get in the building if you're not 20 minutes early. So I do want to once again, as I always do, reflect that that's part of the leadership. It's exciting to think about the succession planning that's going on, meaning that value system should carry forward. And again, I think the fact that you probably just had nothing but softball questions all night is a reflection of people feel safe, people feel heard, and more importantly, feel like the police and they are the community, not either or.
Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was at last night's meeting, but not at the sub-area conversation for Melody Hill. So I was just wondering if you could give a little bit more depth to that, the tenor of that conversation.
Yeah, we had several business people for the first part of the conversation about Melody Hill and Cedar Terrace. And then, but quite a few people came to the second part, discussing the residential component of the comprehensive plan, providing their inputs to both those sub-areas. I think at that point we had about 35 folks that were there for the second part, so that is a pretty good turnout. And we got some solid information that will continue to inform our comprehensive plan going forward that you will start to see later this summer.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I was just really impressed with the amount of people that did come. And lots of good questions, lots of amazing feedback. Okay, so next is the review of the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program with our city engineer, Rich Meredith.
And on. Hello, everybody. I'm Rich Meredith. I'm our city engineer. I believe John Merrick, our city traffic engineer, is joining virtually. John, are you out there?
Oh, yep, we have one, John Merritt, yep.
Okay.
Would you like me to allow him to talk?
Yes, please.
Yep,
Hand up already.
All right, so John,
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah, I'm here today. Can you hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Great, thanks.
So I know we just approved the tip in February 15th, but we realized that there's some state reporting requirements that require us to adopt next year's tip. Yeah, John, can you mute? We're getting some feedback there.
John, can you mute? We're getting
Yeah.
feedback here.
Yep, let me see. Here.
So anyway, we need to adopt the next year's tip so we can report it to the state and get back on track. So that's why we're here tonight. For the most part, it hasn't changed from what it was last in February, but we've added in the 2030 projections. So John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is, since we went over this just a few months ago, and really, when we went over it in February, we were trying to catch up since we were really late last year. We're trying to catch we need to submit our updated tip to the state by July 1st. And so we didn't want to be late again. And that's why it's a quick turnaround. So there's not really a lot of change, and we're anticipating more change in the next go round once we've completed the update to the TMP. So really what you see in this one with the Exhibit A that you have is we added the 2030 year on. I kept 2024 on so you could see what projects were being completed this year that we were on track to complete this year. But there's no real new addition projects at this point. Like I say, that'll come in the update on the next one.
I just wanted to add that there's 12 more business days until we hear about the RAISE grant. 11 if you don't count June 13th, because we'll be celebrating other stuff on that day. So are there any questions?
Do you have questions?
I'm not prepared to answer or ask any questions,
Oh.
but kind of. Okay, yeah, right, fair enough.
I do want to add that on the 20th next week, we're also having a public hearing, so we can be prepared to answer more questions then if you have some.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Rich and John. Clearly, we need to get on this and get the update done. It did remind me, though, that during the last go-around, we had some questions about process and how things get on the list and how we can influence that list. Now's not the time necessarily for that, but I guess maybe just a flag to let's come back to that at some point and really have a thorough discussion, especially as we go into the next round. That's going to be more of a bigger update based on the TMP and the updated transportation master plan and the comp plan and all of that. So just a flag more so than any questions. Just great job. Thank you both for your work and look forward to getting this done and carrying on and making things happen here in the city.
Okay, anyone else? All right, thank you.
All right, now for the exciting
So next
subject.
is the review ordinance adopting engineering development manual with Rich Meredith and Chrissy Osborne. Is that true? Okay. All right.
We're going to go through them one by one. Okay. Well, I guess Lan, is there a way to load up? I put a last minute PowerPoint and I don't see it on here.
Let me show you. This is,
You know how to do it.
yeah, your message in this one, right? This one, right? Is this the one?
Yeah, I did it in the OneDrive folder
OneDrive folder? No.
for the council materials.
Yeah, this is the same one, right?
Right, I put a PowerPoint presentation in there.
Oh, okay, the PowerPoint in a OneDrive one?
Yes.
Okay, so. It does not allow me to access the OneDrive from this one, but I have, yeah, it's okay. The online one.
It may not have been loaded in there.
Not loaded in here? Okay,
No,
so
okay.
that is the case. then
That's
I
okay.
have- No, it's okay, I can get it down for you, okay.
Okay.
We're going to Teams. Give me 1 sec.
Did I not?
13, there you go.
I love the lanyard.
5,
Yep,
I'll never lose
there we go. Thank you very much. Yes.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it just fits right into my pocket
And then I need,
Load it.
and then I need
Okay.
to share.
and my
Yeah.
other pockets.
Shared screen.
Yes.
One, right?
Yep. All right. I'm sorry for the delay. Yeah, it's, yeah. Okay. This has been our task that we've been working on since last, December of 2022. That's when we started this. The purpose of our project here is to adopt, or what we need you to do is review and adopt this new engineering development manual. We don't have a development manual right now, so we have standards that are scattered about in the code, in the comp plans, in the design details. They're in numerous places. It makes it really difficult when you want to update a standard, because if you don't catch all the places it's in, you can get some inconsistencies. It makes it really confusing for our development community, and our internal staff is trying to figure out which standard we're designing to. It's, yeah, it's been very cumbersome, as I guess a good word for it. So I reached out to some of my colleagues over in Shoreline, and they donated their manual, the Word document, so we didn't have to start from scratch. And then we began the process of trying to convert that to the standards that we want to follow. The advantages of having an engineering development manual, as we have here, it streamlines the design and plan review process, which is going to make it better for our developers, because we hear from them a lot of confusion, and we want to try and avoid that. Some of the background, as I was saying, there's a lot of inconsistencies that we're finding in the code. The town center plan was updated last 2019. The last time we did engineering details, 2022. The current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015, and the last amendment was 2019, and the current TMP was 2020. So we've got a lot of time where we haven't made any changes to it. And as a result of that, we're currently in the process of this development manual, and we're updating the comprehensive plan, and we're updating the transportation master plan, and we're making a number of revisions to the municipal code, which we'll talk about during the public hearing next week. So with all this new development, new developments and new planning effort going on, this is the perfect time to consolidate all the standards into our development manual, pull them out of the code where it makes sense, and pull them out of the comp plans where it makes sense. This is our first edition of it. Anything that was kind of controversial, we decided to table it and hold it off until the next edition, because this manual is very complicated. It touches a lot of stuff. I am sure that there's a few things that we missed in there, and we're going to start on revision 1 about a week after we adopt it. So my goal is to bring this back to you every year until we get to a point where maybe we could do it every 2 years. But this is kind of bringing us into, current times now, because we are a little behind the times at the moment. Here's a listing of the visits, the touches that the Planning Commission had on it. So we first went to them on the 27th of December, 2022. And then I introduced the manual in sections so that, because you can't absorb the whole thing in one night. The last time we touched base with them was on January of this year, where we had the public hearing, and they recommended unanimously to forward that to the council. Since then, there's been a couple of minor edits, and we were working on a lot of the code revisions. So that's how we made it to tonight. So right now, we're meeting tonight as I can present this overview of it. Next week, we have the public hearing and code revisions. And depending on the comments that we get from the public and comments that I have from you folks, we can either adopt it next Thursday, or if there's more work and questions to be answered, then we can do it at a following meeting or so. And these are stuff that don't matter. So here's an outline of the EDM. We call it EDM for short. The idea of the layout of it is to kind of follow and walk somebody through the process of development. So you're going to start off with the administrative section, which has a number of elements, but it highlights kind of the permit process to kind of educate people on that and what they have to do about submittals. The next section is the right-of-way section. This is where you're going to find design standards, street design standards, how we want to see our bike and pedestrian facilities built. There's a section on stormwater and all the stormwater requirements. Normally we follow the Department of Ecology, but then we've got some of our own enhancements to Department of Ecology requirements. We cover our sanitary sewer and our water. We have a section on constructions and inspections, and then how you close out the project. So this is meant to be kind of a comprehensive look as you go from start to end of a project, a development. So I thought I'd list out some of the areas that had a lot of discussion when we've been talking among staff and with the Planning Commission. One of them had to do with parking. So I know parking is kind of a broad topic. It's got a lot of issues, both for and not. And so we wanted to make sure that we started addressing the parking, trying to get that all consolidated into one place so that we could start to talk about how we wanted to address parking. Town center is a great example. I mean, we hear that parking is an issue, but there's also competing needs in town center for pedestrian space, active trail connections, bike lanes, all of that. And so in a built environment, we don't always get to have all the things that we want. So there's going to be some places where we have to compromise a little bit. Parking tends to be one of those areas. So how do we address that? That's something we can talk a little bit more about next week, because we've got some changes that we're proposing for the zoning code to do some of that parking off-site, off-street. But recognizing that we're still going to have deliveries, we're still going to have some on-street parking needed, our EVs, charging stations, things like that. So parking is one of the subjects we tried to touch on in there. Undergrounding of utilities. Right now we have some undergrounding of utility language in there. We were looking to make that a little stronger, not just to require the undergrounding from the sidewalk to the building, but along the frontage. And there's also been some talk about what do you do if the lines are on the other side of the street? Do they have to cross the street? There's lots of issues around undergrounding of utilities. And so this is our start at how do we incorporate that. Driveway accesses were another topic. As we have to incorporate more and more units on our sites, on our plats, our parcels, shared parking, shared driveways are going to be something that we'd like to encourage. Or if we don't have that, how would we squeeze in, driveways, limit the number of driveways that a parcel has, circular driveways, things like that were all addressed in here that we didn't really have much direction on before. Sidewalks was a big topic because we found some places of the codes, we found it was 5 feet was a minimum, some places it's 6, some places it's undefined. So we were trying to standardize that. Same thing with bicycle lanes. We hear from a lot of the public and a lot of planning commission and everybody that bike lanes are an important feature that we want to have in the city. And we agree. I mean, we want to try to enhance our bicycle network. And so how we incorporate the bike lanes is included in here. Some of the subjects that come up is, do you just have a striped bike lane? Do you have a protected bike lane? Do you have a off-street facility? All of these could be considered, but it's going to come back to how much right-of-way do you have? And which is how we're going to prioritize what's out there. Lighting is another issue. I think our standards were a little bit light on the lighting. And so we're trying to standardize that to more of what we see in both our city and some of the neighboring. Traffic impact analysis, we wanted to be able to put some more descriptions about what we're looking for a traffic impact analysis. We're going to have more development in the city, and so the more we can define what constitutes as a valid traffic study, the better it is for both us and them. I didn't put it on here, but one of the questions that we heard also was noise. That's one of the topics that we might table until the next edition, but the neighboring jurisdictions have stricter, more detailed noise variance criteria, and that's something that I think maybe not in this meeting, but down the road we want to talk about if we want to tighten that up. Working on Saturdays, do we want to let people work on Sundays, things like that. I put in here also, here's some of the code revisions that we'll highlight next week. But again, it has to do with off-street parking. We're trying to tighten up some of the requirements on that because there's some ambiguity and we want to make sure that's clear. We've added some suggestions about loading, off-site loading for developments. Some of these large residential developments, they're proposing one loading space for the entire 300-unit development. So I found some interesting studies that help support our recommendations that we can talk about next week. More on the utilities. We took a lot of the utility requirements out of the code and put it in the EDM, but there's some stuff that we've left in there just because we want to make sure we're covered in some areas, and if we find that we've duplicated it, then we'll do them in our next revision to try to clear that up. We've addressed the driveway accesses and the sidewalks again. Town center design standards, we found there were some inconsistencies. I mean, we have a great vision, and I love our vision. We just need to be able to enforce the vision when it comes to development. And there were some contradictions in there. So we've addressed some of those, and again, we've tightened up the lighting. One thing I didn't list on the EDM also is that we have, in one of the appendices, we've started a what we call our street design matrix. You know, in the past, we've had a typical section when you're trying to design a road. You know, here's where you want your sidewalk and how wide your road is for different classes of streets. That doesn't really work too well in application. You have to basically design it based on the roadway and the right-of-way that you have in the development. So what we've done is we've started looking at each individual roadway and actually determining how wide it will be curb to curb, and how wide the planning strip is, and how wide the sidewalk is. And we applied that to town center, because in the town center zoning code, it had just the generic cross sections, and that didn't quite work when we were talking about 56th or 232nd, things like that. So I think our street matrix is going to give us a lot more concrete values, and that should eliminate some of the confusion among developers and designers. So where would you like me to go?
Okay, does anyone have any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. Fabulous work, first and foremost. Fabulous work, first and foremost. And wonderful to hear the City of Shoreline was sharing. We were just with them this morning. A lot of good stuff happening over there. That said, I wanted to jump quickly, and I'm not sure if this is your question, council question, or futuristic question. Alleys, 9.3, barely makes it into the fourth line, and that fourth line is the city does not maintain alleys. Is that mostly because we don't have alleys? And then I think to myself, you know, some of the feedback I've been hearing during the, geez Louise, yes, what is the C again? Comprehensive Plan Advisory Group is this idea that alleys, especially for trash collection and stuff along those lines, could be a real remedy. And then I think to myself, I don't even know if I can point to an alley in Mountlake Terrace, but is that part of, there we go. I mean, yeah, again, someone help me with a question here. I guess really I'm trying to get at, should we be filling that out in the future tense, thinking that alleys might become more significant? Maybe that's the question. But the mayor's got her hand up. Maybe you can ask a better question of what I'm trying to get at.
We just have one alley.
Oh, we just have one alley. Oh, okay. Well, again, when I think about the redevelopment of this, and it was just an interesting set of conversations that I would encourage us to look back at or solicit. Because again, it was this idea of the trash, and then that kind of led to, what do you have, dumpsters versus individuals? And I mean, I'm sure you've heard it 100 times, the conversation to me first time. But, you know, when I look at this, I go, I don't know, that seems like an area that we might want to look at, even though it says we do not maintain them.
I would just say that I share your opinion of alleys. I think alleys are a really important feature, both for developed areas with buildings and stuff. It's really helpful and useful to have the garbage pickup and deliveries off of alleys. The problem that we've got with alleys is we don't have any, and so we have to find some way to get the right-of-way dedicated or designated for an alley, and that's something that it's hard to get at this point when we're in a built environment. But I think that where we can get an alley, I think that we should, you know, try to get it. And when we get the alleys, I think that's a carryover from both Shoreline and Seattle. They don't maintain their alleys just because they're trying to, you know, designate their resources to doing the regular streets, taking care of the regular streets. But I think the alleys are very important features, and anywhere we can get one, I think that would be great.
I just ask, I didn't know that we had so many people. I was just going to ask if alleys were not maintained because it is individually owned and not the city that doesn't own them.
It depends. They can be, if there's multiple parcels, backing up onto them, they could be city-owned. They could, if they're privately owned, then there would have to be easements and stuff on what would, how the use would be. And so some of our private roads could maybe be looked at as an alley, but most of them aren't through streets. And if they were private like that, then that would just reinforce that we wouldn't be able to maintain them.
So Councilmember Payne Donovan and then Murray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks, Rich and everybody else who worked on this. I think this effort predates my time on council. I recall being on Planning Commission when this process all started. So it's an important reminder that a lot of the work that you and staff do is long and takes a lot of focus and thought to sort of see these complex documents through. I guess I wanted to understand first your thoughts on sort of the efficiency this brings to, just at a high level, you touched on a little bit, but what might the development community or the everyday person who might be making a frontage improvement or something along those lines, how is this going to help them? And then also, as we're talking about like pedestrians and bicycles, I see some like standards in here that I have some like personal thoughts and feelings about. One in particular is sharrows or bikes painted on roadways that don't otherwise have bike lanes, and I think there's increasing amount of research that shows that sharrows actually put bicyclists into roadways where they're not actually any safer, and might encourage them to ride places where they might be in more danger actually, and I don't think they're actually personally don't feel they're appropriate as bicycle infrastructure. So just wanted to put that comment out there, but I think otherwise this is a terrific effort, and I'd welcome your thoughts about my first question there. Like, is this going to streamline your work in a meaningful way, and how what's that going to look like?
The streamline part is just having kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of the design standards. There will continue to be other documents that we have to reference, both from the federal and the state level. The MUTCD is a document a federal document that we have to follow for all of our traffic control devices and striping and such. Things, ecology requirements, we're going to have to follow those. Those are just some examples. But by the example I was using for the sidewalks, that was one of the contradictions that we found. So depending on where you looked, you could get a different answer for how wide your sidewalk could be. And if you're a developer, you're going to pick the one that benefits you the most. And that's not always what works best overall. So by streamlining it, I think what I'm hoping to do is reduce the number of times and the number of questions that we get from developers, the number of times they have to submit for plans. If they understand what the rules are from the start, then hopefully that will speed up the process from there. And as to your question for the bikes, as part of our transportation master plan, we're doing that from scratch, and there will be a pedestrian element and a bicycle element. And then there's been interest in having a standalone pedestrian and bike plan. I don't know where that is going to end up, but we definitely want to address some of those policy issues for the how you stripe bike lanes when we look at the pedestrian and bike element.
Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rich. Appreciate all of the work, from you and all of the staff involved in this. And I will say on first pass, I appreciated, I think, to your comment about how it kind of just walks you through the steps. I think that's incredibly helpful to have people both understand what's required, but kind of the flow of how that process plays out with the city. And I thought the document was put together in a way that is very easy to review and digest. And so really grateful for all of the work to put this in place. And I think in terms of reducing, time involved to develop projects, both in terms of the amount of time staff have to spend answering questions and re-reviewing, things because there wasn't clarity of understanding from somebody who's engaging in a project. I think about, both the quickness of projects and in terms of how that impacts the final cost of doing projects in our city, which is passed along to our residents, as well as, the time investment from staff, allowing them, capacity to take on other things. I think this is a really important step forward. And so just really grateful for all of the work that's gone in there. And don't have a lot of, specifics in the terms of the content at this point in time, but I did have, as you were talking about areas that you heard a lot of kind of conversation as the process was going, I think a couple that I didn't see make it on there, but that we've had lots of questions and feedback on, particularly around parking, is ADA parking. So disabled parking, like for street parking, and access to different community amenities. And so I think that's one that I would just flag for you, comes up a lot for us when parking comes up and standards around that. And then the other one is around electric charging, as more and more folks are utilizing electric vehicles, how that works particularly with multifamily and higher density housing. Those are areas we get lots of, or at least I feel like from my perspective, we've heard a lot of questions about. And so I would imagine that whether that is as part of this process or as we look forward, if we could drive some clarity there around those, people would probably appreciate that. So, but other than that, thank you. I appreciate the work. Look forward to the conversation next week, and appreciate that we will have this ready for folks to access in the near future.
So just a little feedback on that. For ADA parking, when we designate individual parking stalls, we have to provide ADA parking. That's part of the federal code. So there are, as part of the Main Street plan, we're looking at putting in some angle parking in one spot, and so we'll have to designate one space as ADA accessible right there. And the EV is something that we've talked a lot internally about. We have zoning codes that cover the private development requirements, but there will need to be more discussion for how we handle the EV charging on the streets. We're going to have, when the Sound Transit station goes revenue service live, definitely are concerned about how the impacts that's going to have to our parking. Because I know what the parking was like before Sound Transit, and people were parking on 58th pretty regularly. The transit station would fill up by 7. So I'm anticipating similar impacts. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't know. And so, parking all around the station is going to be an issue. And then how we provide for EV charging stations is an issue. And then who pays for it? I mean, that's going to be the other element of that is if we have provided them on street, would we contract with somebody to charge for it? I don't know. That's part of the later discussion. So,
thanks, Rich.
You're welcome.
Mayor Pro Tem Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Rich, thank you so much. And Christy, I know that this has been a huge lift for a long time. And particularly, it's just part of a bigger picture of the progress we're trying to make with our community development program and department and vision, achieving the vision we have for our community. And it's an important part that has been, you know, some of us have heard a lot of feedback and frustration from the development community about a number of different pieces, and this is, I think, hopefully helping us make a lot of great progress. And it's certainly something that has been necessary, and appreciate you bringing this, pulling it all together and helping us get to a better place. Two quick questions along those lines. The primary client is going to be the development community. What kind of outreach have we had? How much have we incorporated working together with them into this process and getting their feedback on the manual itself? Recognizing, part two of my question is, most of this at this point is really just kind of incorporating our code, our current code. And as you pointed out, for the most part, it is putting it all into a usable manual for people to use in the development process, compiling all the different various pieces of code that we have out there, with a few areas where we had some conflicting information that needed to be clarified, right? So what would be helpful is, and so I think it sounds like we're not actually going to be updating the code pieces of this next week. We're just adopting the manual, at least according to this, review the ordinance, adopting the manual, right? And then based on that, we're going to be getting some code updates that we need to adopt as well.
You should be getting the updates, the code revisions available tomorrow, and we were going to discuss those next week. So next week should be the adoption of this and the code updates, unless we have more questions, then we need to bring that back.
Okay.
So you will have code updates next week.
Okay, so then that gets back to this, you know, this is hopefully it's, you know, it's already been worked through. I mean, it sounds like the Planning Commission has done an extensive, you know, review of the manual itself. I'm looking forward to hearing about the development community and how we've worked together with them to help get us put together the manual. And obviously the code updates should be, for the most part, just implementing what we've already been discussing and reviewed and putting into the manual. So hopefully it's a no-brainer. That said, there's a lot of code, right? And there's a lot of different moving pieces, and potentially, depending on the conflicts, and I guess that's what we're really going to be highlighting during the discussion perhaps next week, which, by the way, 3 of us will be online out of town plus the city manager at the conference. So we may not be able to, so patience with us, because because of that, we may not be able to actually adopt it next week. But recognize that I think we all agree we want to get and desire to get there. But there may be some pieces that there's a little more feedback that will be difficult for us to convey online. At any rate, I guess that will be, to me, the key will be the key is getting the feedback from the people, the users, primary users, and the differences, you know, what are we cleaning up? What are we fixing? And it shouldn't be controversial, because I'm assuming that it's basically adopting the vision that, you know, we have for this community. But there may be some questions in the process. So I guess those are the key things I want to touch on tonight. Thank you. But again, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just speak to outreach. So with all projects that we've been doing out of engineering and the CED department, we've been reaching out to the development community. This is no exception. So we did that early in the process, reached out to those folks. I think that, as Councilmember Wall said, and others of you have heard, the development community has wanted this type of process to occur for a very long time. This is a process that internally some of us have wanted to happen for a very long time. And so for some of us, I'm very excited. This is a huge step in the right direction for us. Like Rich said, we have a lot of conflict. Time is money when you're developing, and also when we have conflicting code and we have ambiguity and people aren't sure, then it just adds to the cost of development. and it adds to the timeline that we're trying to get a project done. So I think it's going to be a two-step process, like Rich kind of alluded to. One is this in general the step in the right direction that we want to take with the development community? I think it's a resounding yes. We're not going to know, just like anything we adopt, until we go out and road test this thing, and then we're going to find the things that work and the things that may not work. And that's why it's important for us to come back to you guys next year and the year after that and say, hey, you know, we thought this was pretty good, but we missed some stuff. So let's go back and let's address some of these things. And then, like Rich said, we could, as complex as this is, we could work with this and never get any traction and movement in the right direction. So our hope is that you adopt this, we get that traction, and then we go back and we improve it and make it better as we move forward. So that's where we're at.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to add a little bit. So what I'm envisioning once we get a live document is that I think it would be really helpful to set up a comment section on the webpage, because we'll have this available online, and we would be able to collect comments from anybody, suggested revisions, things like that, over the next year until we're ready for the next revision.
I would also say our developers aren't shy about telling us what they like and don't like. So, I mean, you know, some folks we work with a lot, and I'm hoping that we have a pretty good relationship with a lot of people now, a better relationship of where they can let us know their thoughts. So I think that's improved over time as well, so. Yeah. You guys will hear about it.
Can, John, I see your hand up. Do you have some?
It's been, yeah. It's been a focal time.
Nope, that's errant hand. Sorry about that.
All right, I don't see any other hands going up then. And if not, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just wanted to do one last thank you to the team that worked on this. Christy worked on it, John worked on it, Michelle, our consultant, she put a lot of work into this. She was instrumental in making it pull together. Laura Reed, Jeff Rivers, Jesse Hoffman, and our attorney, Hillary. She did a really good, thorough look at this and really helped help it shape up, and especially in the code stuff. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Okay. So next is what was last time we couldn't get around to it. So the review of the request for proposals for long-range sustainability consultant with our Deputy City Manager, Carolyn Hope.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Nice to see you all. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Yes, just here to review again the idea of a long-range financial sustainability task force and a consultant to support that work. And just wanted to take a little step back and just talk a little bit about the task force idea again. This did come up during council retreat and some previous conversations about our financial projections, and that there may be a gap in the future, and that we've been working on improving our community engagement in many different ways as a city, and that this could be a way to bring a group of people together to evaluate options that could impact them in the long run, whether that's making cuts, changing levels of service, or increasing the ask for revenues in the future. And so I just wanted to also give you some other background that the International City Managers Association and the Government Financial Officers Administration, GFAO, they both highly recommend processes like these as a way to engage community in these conversations, again, because they're the stakeholders ultimately of the outcomes. And it really also is a great way for people to learn more about the budget and the challenges that we face as an organization, our limitations on raising funds, the types of funds that we have available to us, which aren't always the best and most equitable way to raise funding. And even in the end, after learning all of that, if certain people may disagree with the outcome that council may decide on, at least they understand the background. And oftentimes, we have found in some of the research that even if people aren't supportive of the ultimate recommendation, they may, or they weren't in favor of the ultimate recommendation, they may be supportive of it and knowing that our options are limited. So with that, I just wanted to say those were some of the reasons that we wanted to move forward with this task force as a group. And also just wanted to share that there's several cities in the region that have been doing this, some for multiple periods of time. So a lot of times you're updating your long-range financial plan every 5 or 6 years. Some people do it more often. But there's local neighbors. Shoreline has done committees like this for the past since 2009. So 3 times they've had a committee like this. Kenmore is on their second version of this committee. Port Townsend recently had a committee like this, and Tukwila as well. And in all of these cases, they're asking the committee to evaluate options for both ends of the stick, right? Like, are we going to make some cuts? Are we going to ask for more revenues? Or is there a combination of options that we should be looking at? And they may make recommendations to the city councils, and the city councils may modify those recommendations. And oftentimes there's even a minority report in the task force group. So I think it's important to remember that it is always your decision, and that the, again, just being transparent and open with these task force or committee members is really the goal of, as always, but also just to help them understand why council might make a different decision in the long run. So I guess, first of all, are there any questions about the idea of a task force before we get into the idea of a consultant to support that work?
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate both some time to sit with us a little bit longer and coming back and for the additional context and discussion here. I was going to say, as somebody who was very on board with this idea and very supportive of community engagement and finding ways to bring more folks into the conversation and to gather their perspectives, which we may not come up with on our own, was very excited about this and had some concerns that I know I shared the last time we discussed it. In part, maybe reactionary to, a public process that, had gone on elsewhere that didn't feel like it was engaged in a way that ultimately helped the community to better understand the decisions that were being made and why, and left them feeling less heard. And so appreciate, I think, the additional information and kind of the approach laid out here. I think it will be really important to ensure that we are doing that educational component, right? That people are understanding, like, what are the levers, and I think that is not just people within this, potential group, but throughout the community. But I do think it's important. I think it is an area that people do not understand, and I do think it is incumbent on us to better educate them. And I am supportive of moving forward with this. Because of those reasons. I think we need to be very thoughtful and hopefully find a really great consultant who can ensure that they are doing that really important work of educating, and that when we circle back to recommendations and decisions, that we have intentional conversation and communication around where we land and why. So that would just be my ask there, but I think it's a good plan and appreciate all the work that's gone into it.
Yeah, and I also just want to thank you for those comments, and also if any council members have perspectives from other cities, similar efforts that went well or didn't go well, we'd be happy to hear what those were from your perspective and reach out to those communities and do a little lessons learned about that. And I think also the other idea about having this third party come in, a consultant, to help us with this is to build trust in the idea that These aren't just city excuses about our revenue sources and the limitations on us, that there's an expert here from a different place that can share other experiences from, other municipalities they've worked with the state and understanding the laws. Obviously, Jeff and I and the finance director understand those things, but sometimes it's that having that other person there to help build that trust is important as well. Any other questions or comments?
Anyone else? Because it's going to go to the Mayor Pro Tem. Did you want to talk? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, thank you for bringing this forward. You guys have been hearing for some time my very deep concerns. Appreciation for the direction we're going and the vision we're creating for this community and what it takes to get there. But at the same time, the warning signs every time we have the budget review, right? And we keep looking at that 6-year financial forecast, and it's, we have the money now, we can afford to do this now, but in 6 years, it runs out and we start running red, and we literally can't afford to do that, right? Our ending fund balance keeps going down to the point that we can't afford to do what we are continuing to do, and we still have big dreams. We still have things we want to achieve, right? So the question is, how do we do that? And we've been needing to have a thorough process put in place for us to help figure that out. And it's one of the things that I've learned, we've had these task forces and work groups in the past. And one of the things that I've really come to value in the task force or work groups or these other advisory groups that we create is the ability to do what we honestly can't do on the dais. One of the challenges that we and the Planning Commission have is a formal process. And by turning it over to an advisory group, they have the ability to really dive into issues. We need to dive, and we need to educate ourselves. So this is not an out for the council, right? We still have to be thoroughly aware of what we're doing and the decisions we're making. But having the more feedback we can get, better our decisions will be. And especially representing and getting the value, the input and understanding of the community. As Councilmember Murray points out, part of it is going to be educating the community, but part of it is also going to be listening to the community. And that's something that, it's hard for the community to come and give, during a public hearing, their feedback in a short, concise period, whereas a work group, an advisory group, they have the ability to really interact and learn and create and have those open houses and listen, and for us to be able to really listen and understand where they're coming from and what their priorities are. So that gets back to part of what I want to make sure we're incorporating into this, the work group, advisory group, and the consultant is, kind of a priorities of government approach. And how are we truly spending where we need to be spending? Where are there opportunities to make some cuts or changes in services? And recognizing the vision, which we're going to be talking about here with our vision and goals, what else do we want to be accomplishing, and what is going to cost us to be able to achieve those goals? And how do we make adjustments? And are there areas, so, there are a lot of different revenue sources out there. One of them is property taxes, sales taxes, but there's also a number of different taxing districts, local improvement districts, business districts, tax and financing districts. There's a lot of different opportunities. And then another thing that one of our dreams is also the rec pavilion. And it can't just be a dream for much longer, right? that's that we need to address that. But while we're addressing that, that's going to be there are, again, metropolitan parks districts, public facility districts, public-private partnerships. There's a lot of different ways we can address just that one very piece of it, but there's a lot of, these are all moving parts we need to understand. And it's important for us to understand that when we are making these decisions and recognize we want to achieve all these great things and it costs money, well, guess what? It's money coming out of taxpayers' pockets who are already tax challenged, and not just tax challenged. I mean, we're all experiencing it day by day, right? I mean, cost of living. Okay, sorry, I'm going to take a minute to point out, you guys know I travel a lot, and I see a lot of amazing things around the world, but I also see the challenges out there. A lot of communities, the median income from where I just got back from is $30 to $100 per month. Their families are living on $30 to $100 a month and making it work. I have a whole nother discussion about depression and happiness levels and why we have this high cost of standard of living and yet we have skyrocketing depression in this community and suicide rates are going up. And it's disturbing and scary. That's a conversation for another day. Yet they're happy. I mean, they're happy anyway. It might be island life, but whatever. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that things cost money. A lot of people can't afford to be paying too much more of anything. I mean, we're also going to be talking about water rates and additional need for, again, the rec pavilion, all our big dreams, the cost of government. We're not the only ones. We're just one little city. You've got the county, who's going to be coming with a tax measure coming up real soon. We've got the port that's got a measure on the ballot in August. We've got the state. We've got the feds. I mean, there's constant draining just on the cost of government, let alone cost of society and standard of living and everything that we're trying to do just to get by. So those all need to be part of the consideration in how do we go about making decisions we want to make and how do we get there at the end of the day to keep our financial forecast running in a positive way, achieving the things we want to achieve while doing it without hurting our community and their ability to pay for everyday needs. So, sorry, that was a long way of saying this is necessary. We need to do this. I'm very excited that we're getting started with it. And thank you for bringing this forward. And I look forward to working through this process to figure it all out.
Thank you. Well, I remember talking about this for a long time. So if we're finally getting it done, let's get it done.
Or that, I could have said that.
So the memo was really about the consultant that we would hire. And I would say that we've had a change, I think that you're aware of, since I started writing this scope of work. And I had an optional task for providing financial advice, and we may add a little more meat to that, given that we may not have a permanent finance director for a little while. But we want to make sure that we have good financial projections and data to share with this group. So we will evaluate that part of the scope of work as well. Any questions about the scope?
So any more questions before we move on?
Sorry, was I supposed to make that into a question?
No. Okay, so I guess we can just move on to the review of the board and commissions appointments with our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Bringing to you tonight the recommended appointments for the boards and commissions. As you all know, we have several. I had several appointments. We also have one that convenes every 5 years in the community to discuss the salary commission, to discuss the, I forget the word I'm trying to say, what council members' compensation is. So that ordinance was passed in 2019. It convenes every 5 years. We need to have that completed by the end of this year to start with the 2025 session. So the subcommittee met earlier this month on the 5th and interviewed applicants for those positions on the 5th, and again, a couple interviews on the 6th. And the recommendations are listed in the memo. For the Arts Commission, it's a 3-year term, and Benjamin Howe and Sarah Frost to that commission. For the DEIC, it would be Patricia Pottinger, and she is a new appointment. Planning Commission, Nick Batista for a 4-year term. Recreation Parks Advisory Commission for Joe Cross, which is a new appointment, filling a term of a commissioner that, I'm sorry, not filling a term, but appointed to a term for a commissioner that moved out of state. And then you see the names for the Salary Commission there: Chris Finch, Sarah Frost, Julie St. George, Darlene Thompson, and Cameron Wu. And that's all I have for you this evening. We have this on your agenda for next meeting for formal appointment, and then we will notify those applicants should you approve those next week. Happy to answer any questions.
So when we told them that they won't know until the 20th, and we're already... So the decision will be when we vote on it next week?
Yep.
Okay. Because we have another thing to vote on before we can vote on this. All right, any other questions, comments? Councilmember Payne Donovan.
Thank you, Mayor. And just a quick comment. I think it's exciting and terrific to see some new faces joining our boards and commissions. And I think one thing, and I haven't been tracking this personally closely, but I have heard some comments. You know, as people have noticed some of these new appointments, not sure that it's always well advertised that it's not always well advertised that positions are coming up for reappointment or for or that these opportunities are always available. So I think I just encourage us to advertise and make sure that when reappointment or term expiration is happening, that we encourage folks to apply and to submit their applications. I think it's important to sort of have a good pool and to have robust process with this. What is basically the pipeline of civic engagement and leadership here in our city. So I'll stop there.
Okay, did anyone else have any comments or questions? I thought we had a good number of people to choose from, so it wasn't like we had 5 spots and 5 people. We had choices. All right, so, yeah. It's amazing how many people who sign up for this are so qualified or, or so eager and so forth. It's just nice to see people out there wanting to be a part of the city and volunteering and so forth. So it's really kind of nice. I remember in the old days, a long time ago, when there was one spot open, there was one person that came. Because I remember I was that one person. So, anyways, so that'll be on the agenda next week. And so if no one has any other questions, I'm going to move on to the next item, which is the review, revised council vision and strategic plan goals with our city manager.
Thank you again, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Couple pieces tonight. Carolyn and I are going to do this presentation together. I'm going to go over the goals document, and then Carolyn will go into the the objectives and the action items. So we've heard, or we've talked quite a bit about this, starting at our retreat, or your retreat rather, back at, that long ago? It was the end of April. Wow, time flies. So we talked about it at that point. We've talked about it a few more times as we refine and continue to move forward with targeting our goals. And you can see in the goals document here that we have 4 goals, and we have specific items under those goals on the document. The first is growing our vibrant community. And we have a statement there, an active and dynamic city where arts, culture, and diversity thrive, fostering connections among community members who call Mountlake Terrace home. And then you see the action steps underneath that. And we also have a piece that we talked a little bit about earlier with the Financial Sustainability Task Force is responsible governance to ensure desired levels of service. And that will be a robust conversation moving forward for the next several years. Striving for cost efficiency and effectiveness by leveraging city assets to their fullest potential. And I think that says it very well, very clear and concise on that statement. An informed and engaged community, going back to the communications we were discussing just a few minutes ago, making sure that people know what's going on, making sure people know what's happening, why and when, are doing the best we can to make sure people know what's happening. And then last but not least, environmental sustainability and resiliency, and minimizing climate impacts while protecting vulnerable populations. Something that is a major goal, I know, for this organization. I did want to call your attention to the vision statement at the top of that document. So we've taken the vision statement that we had before, and I have that here if you'd like me to read it. But the updated one, or the one we'd like to propose, is that Mountlake Terrace cultivates a safe and inclusive community with beautiful parks, abundant recreation, connected neighborhoods, and a supportive business environment. So those are our goals. I'd like to turn it over to Carolyn to talk about objectives and action steps.
Give me one moment and I'll pull up the action plan. There we go. I won't read all of these for you, but I wanted to highlight a few things. One is, so we met with the executive leadership team a couple of times to review the goals and objectives that you all came up with during retreat. And we wanted to identify what we're doing, what we're planning to do, and what we need to do that we haven't already identified based on your goals, and create an action plan and identify the lead parties and the timeline that it will take to do that. So it's clear to staff what their goals are, what their action steps are, given your goals. So the first page here, allow for diverse housing options. You know, we're working on all of these things. That will be a lot of work over the next couple of years to develop the comp plan and the implementation plans that follow. We're already working on growing our events. We do need to address keeping our events coordinator and continuing to have some kind of funding level for those events. And then we have investments in economic development, essentially. So we have a number of action steps there that we're already working on for the most part, except that it would be really helpful to have additional resources and staffing to do more of that. Right now that is divided between the CED director, the city manager, and myself, and even our events coordinator to some degree. So just having some more focus on that would be important to achieve the goals of council. We are working on supporting our business community by removing obstacles to their success. So we'll be looking at evaluating our policies and procedures to see what barriers there might be, continuing to cultivate relationships within the business community so that we hear more information from them directly and how we can be of assistance. And then just building those building community through business community, teens, seniors, and a broader perspective. Inviting and active and safe business districts. Again, this goes back to designing a city that feels safe, wider sidewalks, more lighting, attractive public places. It includes making sure that we're staffing our police appropriately, that we are activating our dense areas with events and gatherings for the community to feel safe and connecting with each other, and all of those good things that we're pretty much working on. We also want to continue preparing for town center development, and there's several steps there to do that. One of the big things we talked about at the council retreat was identifying a pathway to redevelop the recreation pavilion. And so we've identified 4 major action steps over the next few years to do that. One is to identify the needs. We did a needs assessment, but it's quite old now. Looking at funding options, and those could take form in a lot of different ways, and then implementing a plan to move forward. There's also talk that the county may have a capital levy, and that there could potentially be funding in that to support our project or similar projects around the county. The next goal is to ensure sufficient resources dedicated to meet the desired levels of service. Here you'll find a lot of requests for staffing. We would also need to make sure we're updating our functional plans for parks and transportation in a timely way, because that's where we set our levels of service expectations. And also making sure that we're training our staff to make sure we have the expertise we need and to reduce risk for the city. We have a lot of new goals around technology, which is great. I know that's been a priority for staff, and needing systems in place to be more efficient and productive and to organize data better. And so we're completing our IT strategic plan. There will be a number of software products that we will want to implement over time, and we'll be developing internal procedures on how to manage our IT systems and reduce risk, and also on records management. Relating to budget, we identified a goal of engaging the community in ways to resolve our operating and capital budget gaps. So just like our previous conversation, talk of a task force, engaging the community at large about the options that we're considering, spending our ARPA funds to be responsible, and implementing long-term strategies that we've identified to maintain a balanced budget. We also want to continue looking at partnerships, whether that's in the form of a grant or an organization that we can use to reduce our costs and make something better. We talked about there's quite a few needs in regards to maintaining public health, safety, and emergency preparedness. So we'll be investing in updating plans for comprehensive emergency management, hazard mitigation. An internal safety plan for the city needs updating, updating our code relating to fire and public safety, and again, looking at policing staff levels. There was a desire by council to promote public assistance tools regionally. One of those things, sort of at a higher level, is looking at ranking our CIP using an equity tool to make sure that we're addressing our own needs across the city in communities and neighborhoods that most need them. But I think more to the point is this need to make sure that we're spreading the word about the resources available in our region and locally about public assistance or nonprofit assistance for communities that need them, and using our website or events or flyers to do so. And also to ensure that we maintain that social worker in our police department, which we heard is a done deal now. So we're really happy about that. And moving forward, There's a lot of things that we want to do to continue growing our community engagement and community information sharing. We did work on a communications plan this year, and we have not yet done a community engagement plan. There's some tasks here about doing some training for our staff on community engagement techniques and best practices, thinking of new ways to reach communities that we haven't been reaching by evaluating where they're getting their information from and broadening our reach through those channels. We're looking at obviously continuing to work in person and having virtual ways of communicating with people and receiving information, and making sure that we have enough resources in our projects and plans to do the kind of community engagement that you all expect of us and the community expects of us. And some of the tools that we need to broaden our resource pool on is for translation and interpretation. At our meeting last night, or 2 nights ago, for the comp plan, we had 3 interpreters available with 3 different languages. We've been working hard on translation. Those all come at an expense, and it's very important that we do that work, so we just have to think about how we get that done. And let's see, we have a new policy about offering incentives, and we just need to work on implementing that. So that could be for people who maybe couldn't afford to come to a meeting because they can't afford a babysitter, or they would maybe have to miss a little work or something like that. How can we incentivize them through a stipend to attend a meeting or to fill out a survey or otherwise participate in the public process? So, there's another goal about community ambassadors, and we talked at the retreat how that could mean a lot of different things. So we tried to address that here, and would love your feedback on all of these, but especially this one. So we are, again, continuing to build relationships with community members. That's happening in a lot of different ways, through just staff going out and participating, and the council going out and participating in different events around the community and the region. The DEI Commission has been really great at building some of these relationships. It can be a lot of different folks involved in the city who are doing that, as long as we're bringing those folks into the realm of our engagement process and helping them understand what we do and what we have to offer. I think we talked about the use of short-term committees, continuing to provide supportive staff liaisons to our boards and commissions and offering training and resources to them. One of his big goals has been to launch a city university type program and making sure that we do that in a way that people can participate if, they work different hours or speak another language, and thinking about that. And I think the larger scale community ambassador program would be to work closely with community leaders who can reach into their communities and share information both to the city and from the city to certain groups. Typically, those kinds of programs are stipended or paid, and there's a lot of staff time involved in working with them to make sure that they have what they need to do that work. The next one is about broadband access, and some of the ways that staff thought we could support that goal was to advocate for subsidies to support low-income families to have access to broadband internet, to encourage private developers to improve, if they're in the right-of-way, improving the right-of-way, to add conduit for future fiber, and the city would do the same. We'd be happy to hear if you have any other ideas related to that. And then the last goal is about environmental sustainability and resiliency. So we have a lot of work to do for planning for climate change. So we need to do a plan and implement that in the next few years. And then in the early years, we will be updating our critical areas ordinance, and a little bit later on, our shoreline master plan. We talked about emergency management, and we repeated some of those action steps here. And then the last objective was related to active transportation and improving the system. So you heard Rich, our city engineer, talk earlier tonight that the TMP the Transportation Master Plan will have updated bicycle and pedestrian plans. And if we feel that we need to go further than that, we can discuss that after the plan is presented. We would implement the priorities of those plans and work on Main Street, as we've talked about, and continue to seek funding for Safe Routes to School projects. So that was a high-level overview. Happy to talk further if you have questions or comments.
Do we have anyone? Any comments or questions? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, thankfully, you will all know that I am not prepared to go into detail tonight. However, no, thank you. This is great work. A couple of things, I have not had the chance to really dive into this, and so I'm not, I will need a little more time to be able to
Digest it.
provide additional feedback. On a high level, obviously, very supportive, very excited that we're moving forward, very thankful for the work that's being done. Couple of areas that I'm not sure that have been covered in there is talking about particularly celebrating culture, included with the, when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, sense of belonging, and really celebrating the different cultures. I will not go into detail about that. As you know, I very well could, but not tonight. The other areas, you kind of, it sounded like briefly touched on it with the regional, kind of a regional approach on things, but I think it's, here's my concern. A lot of great stuff in here that costs a crap ton of money and that we don't have. And we can't afford it all. So one thing that I think we need to be emphasizing here and in the Sustainability Task Force is regional collaboration, and where are places where we can reduce costs, even if it hurts a little, even if we don't like having to do it, or at least some of our staff may not like having to do it. But I think we've got to force that issue, because none of us, I mean, and we're not the only ones. I mean, a lot of other local governments are really struggling to figure out how to pay the bills. And there's a lot of growing needs out there. And yet there's a lot of services that we're each providing individually that we could be doing more efficiently, perhaps, as a region. Administrative services. One of the things that we've been talking about with the regional groups is like things like crime lab and other certain specified police services. And of course, we'd all love to have our own, but it's costly. It costs a lot of money. So there's opportunities for us to be able to do better in providing and addressing the regional needs on a more efficient level. So I think that's one that we've got to highlight in our goals and in, again, Sustainability Task Force. At any rate, and now that's the extent of where I'm going to go at this point tonight. I think, a lot of great stuff, a lot of stuff we can't afford. I think we've really got to figure out how to, that's what I was going to say. Again, I think maybe in here and back on the Sustainability Task Force is we can't afford to do it all. We're going to need their help in this process and prioritizing which things we can. I mean, none of us want to make that call that, we can't do this because we can't afford it. Yet we're going to have to, and we're going to need help making those decisions. And so that we're going to need to rely on getting the feedback from the public on how do we prioritize this stuff? How are we going to pick and choose between providing interpretive services versus celebrating different cultures and diversity and things like that versus a friendly business environment versus et cetera. I mean, there's some hard decisions that need to be made as we move forward, and we need to recognize that those decisions are coming, and we can't just have this great vision and goal for this community and not recognize the cost of doing it.
So in the past, we put everything in a category of 1, 2, 3, what we really need now, what can wait, and what is going to, and so forth. So that's something that I think that we can do with a task force or a group of people from the council even, because I think we did that at a council retreat one time, prioritizing what we needed. Like if, for example, the pavilion, that right now is sitting there, and it could be that it comes to the point where it becomes number one priority, or we just don't have a pavilion. This is horrible to imagine, but all of our residents will have to go to Linwood or Shoreline or someplace else because we just won't have one. If that thing falls apart and we don't have the money and we can't figure out a way to get it, the alternative is we just don't have one. So anyways, I know we don't want to think like that, but so that's what's so hard about prioritizing some of these things, because everything, there's somebody out here, all 7 of us would think of different items that is their number one, and they're all different. So we just have to kind of work together, as we always have done. Okay, does that bring up any other people wanting to say anything? Councilmember Woodard?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You actually set up my question nicely. Going to 1G, you caught my attention with support from the county-wide levy potential. And so my question is, similarly to how we would go to Olympia, do we want to make a concerted effort to involve this 7 of us or some form of us in talking with these folks? Some of us interact with them a lot, so there's some off conversations that can be had, but I'm thinking maybe more formal. I don't know what the process is, so I'm just saying I would willingly be a part of that coalition, and I do not want to see us go without a pavilion, so I appreciate you articulating, hey, everyone, that's a very real option, and right now the option, without having that funding. And so I was unaware of the county money, but it's like, hey, I'm interacting with them a lot. I think some of us are interacting with others a lot. Let's make it happen.
So that group at the moment is Parks and Recreation Directors from around Snohomish County. It hasn't elevated yet, and we will let you know when it does.
Yeah. And I guess I'm suggesting, can we elevate it? I mean, you can go to a county council, just like you can come to ours at public comment and start making comments, or do you want us to kind of lean back and let this run its course?
I would let it wait.
Okay.
At the moment.
Good idea. I live in a vacuum, and the rest of you just kind of swirling around me, so sorry about that. Good point.
Okay, I don't see anyone else. All right. So we can work on this more. Thank you very much. We're on to public comment. Do we have any? Is anyone signed up from before?
Just one written comment received, and I already sent, included in the agenda, and sent to all council member. And no one signed up for in person, and no online received either. So,
All right. So then, did everyone review the agenda for next week, which is a little heavy for us others coming in on Zoom? Okay, so then we'll, and no, we don't need to talk about that. Council comments. Do we have any council comments? Councilmember Woodard.
Thank you, Mayor. I will keep mine short. I wanted to double back and also encourage everyone for Saturday to come and show the love our city has. I think it'd be awesome to have as many of us there as possible, and cards on the table. I am on the second panel that afternoon, so at least I know I will be there. And I'm going to try to make earlier. Hopefully the weather plays nice. I saw that it's kind of on the fence. But thank you for all of that planning and that partnership, and what a wonderful vision of how we can start using this space. All the more reason for us to come, see what it looks like, see who actually shows up, and how the space is actually activated. I'm very excited for that. And then the other comment that I have is on actual Juneteenth, I'd like to invite this council to 2 different events. The first one is at the city of Linwood, or in the city of Linwood, if you will, and that's another Juneteenth event. I'll be kicking that one off. I have about 30 minutes to, I'm not sure what that's going to look like yet, but nonetheless, the full day of lots of things going on, resource tables, speakers, candy, if you will. It's food, it's everything you can think of. The weather that day is looking pretty good. And then also on Juneteenth, it overlaps that same time period. If you can't make it to Linwood, Edmonds, a group that I work with that we've heard from before, Lift Every Voice Legacy, or Level, is putting on Juneteenth at the beach. This will actually be our 4th time doing a Juneteenth event, although the 2nd time doing it at the beach. Those overlap. You should have the day off if you work for the state. So I'm also encouraging our city, not just the 7 of us, to participate in any of those, and I would look forward to seeing you at any of those events. And I'm bringing those up now because we won't see each other again until the next day, the 20th, where I will ask you, what did you do on the 19th?
We will be at AWC. Councilmember Murray?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief as well, but wanted to take just a moment to recognize that our Mountlake Terrace High School seniors are graduating tonight while we've been here at this meeting, and so wanted to congratulate the class of 2024. I think for all of us, this class holds a special place in that they, were in 8th grade when we started the pandemic. And missed out on a lot of the celebrations that normally occur as you transition from middle school to high school, and then started their high school careers remote. And so they are a resilient bunch who has navigated quite a lot over the last 4.5 years, and just really excited and proud of them for all that they've accomplished, and excited to see what the future holds for them. So I hope they are having a great graduation ceremony, and we look forward to hopefully welcoming them back around the community as they, either stay here or, go out into the world and hopefully come back and visit. So congratulations to each of them and their families.
Councilmember Woodard?
Sorry, Mayor, I forgot I had one more. Thank you for that. It's hard to pause, give that a minute, let it refresh. Thank you, seniors, for sticking it out. We look forward to what your next move will be. That said, let me double back. I forgot there was one other Juneteenth event that's equally as important, which is on the 18th, I believe at 11 a.m. The county will be raising the Juneteenth flag, which is a reminder that one day I hope to see the Juneteenth flag flying in every city in Snohomish County. That said, Mountlake Terrace will be represented because, lo and behold, I'll have some minutes there too, which I will highlight all of the proclamations and what we have done as a council in support of June 19th. So you will hear your ears ringing, or whatever that expression is, on the 18th for sure.
All right, anyone else? I don't see anyone else's hands going up, so next thing on the agenda is adjournment. We're adjourned.
Recording stopped.